Hello, everybody. Josh Scott here, and this is episode 0 of The Space Between. That's actually the spot right there where if I knew what I was doing technically, there would have been some intro music playing. But since I don't know what I'm doing technically, there's not. So I'm definitely learning on the fly with this whole podcasting thing. But if you have music in your head, a song you like that you think would fit there, just go ahead and hum that for a couple bars, and we'll get right into this. So thanks so much for listening. I want to talk today in episode 0, and I'm calling it episode 0 because I just want to talk a bit about who I am, what my hopes are for this podcast, and what kind of things we'll be doing. And then I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of the space between and what exactly we're trying to talk about when we talk about the space between. So we're just going to dive right in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving it a listen. And I hope that something we talk about today or next week or the week after will be helpful and interesting and all of that. So first of all, who am I? Well, my name is Josh, and I've been a preacher, teacher, sermonizer, pastor for almost 20 years. For the last 13 years, I've lived in Morgantown, Kentucky, where I've been one of the pastors at Morgantown Community Church, and going to celebrate 13 years the first weekend of March, I believe. So I've been here in a small rural town in Kentucky for the past 13 years, and we've been on a journey of learning what it means to, I would say, to take Jesus seriously, to take the Bible seriously, to take faith seriously, and to take our humanity seriously. And that has been, for me, about a journey of deconstruction. So for about the past 15 years, my faith has been deconstructing, and I'm in the process now of wondering what reconstructing a new sort of faith might look like. And that's really what I want to explore in this podcast, is when you're sort of standing around and everything you ever thought to be true or right or whatever, when that's like in shambles at your feet and you're wondering, what do I do now? Is there actually anything positive we can say? Is there anything true? Is there anything real? And I think the answer is yes to all that. But what does it look like to build a new faith? And what does it look like to build a faith that we can hold with some sort of integrity? And so this is what my journey has been. And this is what, as I've traveled all over the country in small towns and big cities, I meet people all the time who are on this sort of journey where they're asking, so I've done all this deconstruction business. What does it look like to begin to build something new and something life-giving that I can actually say affirmative, something affirmative about? Like, yes, this is something I believe is true and right and good. So what I want to do in this podcast is I want to talk about alignment. I want to talk about how do you align, and alignment could mean several things for different people. Alignment could mean, how do you begin to align your head and your heart? You have all these things that are stirring inside of you, inside of your soul, like deep down, and yet you also have these things that you've always been told, these things that you quote unquote know, and for some reason your head and your heart seem to be at odds. So what does it look like, and what does it mean, and how can we begin to align our heads and our hearts? For others, it may be talking about, how do I come into alignment from the person I am to the person that I know I really want to become? Like, I'm not the best version of myself yet, and I feel like there's something better. There's a better version of me out there. How do I begin to come into a sort of alignment so that the person I am, like the deepest, best version of myself, is actually who I am, and the person I long to be is who I become? There's all sorts of ways we could be talking about alignment, but that's one of the things I hope happens on this podcast. And I hope a couple other things happen. One is, I hope that you, if you're here and listening to this and you're on a journey of deconstruction, maybe you've sort of been shunned by your religious community or by people who you've known your entire life. Maybe you get weird emails from former pastors or friends or family members. Maybe things are weird at the grocery store for you. I don't know what the cost has been of your journey, but I hope that you know that you're not alone, that there are other people, lots and lots of other people who are on this journey too, who are asking very similar questions to the ones that you're asking, who are having similar experiences, who are rethinking and reframing and reimagining what it might mean to be a person of faith in this new world we find ourselves in. There are all sorts of people doing this. And so I hope you get a sense of solidarity, a sense of, I'm not alone here. There are lots and lots of other people doing and thinking and wrestling with these things. And then I hope that part of what I can do is help amplify voices. I think that there are lots and lots of really brilliant fascinating, engaging, amazingly wonderful people who have lots of really important things to say. And so this podcast will look like, there'll be episodes like today where I'm just talking and I'm saying some things about an idea, a topic, a concept. But what I really want to focus our energy and time on most weeks is talking to people. I'm going to be interviewing people. So next week, I'm going to have an interview with a good friend of mine, Charlie Dean from Peoria, Illinois. Charlie is, he's been a pastor for almost 20 years, and he's actually leaving the pastorate. And so I talked to him about why he's leaving the pastorate, what that means, what that looks like. And so next week, a week from today, Monday, you'll be able to hear that interview with Charlie. So what I hope to do is, and I have all sorts of fun interviews lined up with people who are going to be sharing their story, their journey of alignment, of aligning their head and their heart, aligning who they are with who they long to become. And so that's part of what I hope happens. I hope people are given, because I think there's something powerful about when people just share their stories. Because there's one thing, you can have a formula, you can have a theory, you can have an equation, but there's something else when a real flesh and blood human being, a thinking, feeling, longing, desiring type human being, when they sit down and say, hey, here's my story, here's where I'm from, here's what I've been through, here's what it's been like, and here's what it means for me to live into my best self, into my truest self. That's powerful. And so I'm really excited to be doing that. But today I want to talk a bit about this idea. What does it mean to talk about the space between the head and the heart, between who you are and who you long to become? And I want to start what seems like a long time ago now, around the time I turned 20 years old. When I turned 20 years old, I was ordained. Now, if you've not grown up around church, or if you've not grown up around churches that do such a thing, it may sound like a group of people were clubbing me about the head with sticks and stones or something. That's actually not what happened. Being ordained is essentially when, in my heritage, which is Baptist, when your church says, hey, we think you're actually supposed to be doing this pastoring thing, and we think you believe the right things and you know the right things, so you can do this with some sort of integrity. And so I remember the night I was ordained, there was this whole service on a Sunday evening, and the pastor of the church and I sat down on a stage in front of whoever wanted to show up. Anybody was invited, and he would ask me questions. Now, before this sort of questioning, I was given a book on the certain questions I'd be asked, and here's what Baptists believe on those. And so I'd read the book and I'd memorized the answers. And I remember sitting on the stage and being asked questions, and I was so nervous and my hands were all sweaty. And I was being asked questions. What do Baptists believe about creation? What do Baptists believe about human beings? What do we believe about Jesus, God, the Bible? All those sorts of questions. And I sat and I was giving the answers that I had read in the book. And I was saying, this is what we believe about this, and this is what we believe about that. And at the end of that process, all the men, because all the leaders were men in that church, all the men, the deacons, the leadership, they went down into the church basement where they talked about my responses. And after they got done with sort of their weighing whether or not I had given good enough responses, they came back up and announced to the church that I had in fact passed my ordination oral exam, and that I would be ordained as a pastor in this specific tradition. And as I reflect back on that all these years later, I often wonder, and this is just, my mind is a weird place sometimes, but this is where my mind goes. Like if somebody who had no idea, let's say a visitor from another planet, solar system, universe, I don't know, whatever. Let's say there was somebody who was observing that who had no idea. They'd never been around church. They'd never been around anything like that, an alien from outer space, and they sort of had a telescope zoomed in on my little small town on the Kentucky-West Virginia line, and they were listening in. What would they have imagined that the Christian faith was about? What would they have said, like, oh, their faith is about blank? I don't think they would have picked any specific answer I gave. I think what they would have said is that whatever this is about, it's about having the right beliefs. It's based on belief. And much of what we talk about when we talk about faith ends up falling into that category. We have conversations like, what do you believe about how the world was made? What do you believe about the role of human beings? Who do you believe Jesus is? What do you believe the Bible is? I actually saw on Twitter this week a woman who said that she had was in a conversation with this man, and she told him that she was a minister, and he said, I don't believe in women preachers. And she said, well, I'm right here. Right? I always find that interesting. We say, well, I don't believe in, another one that you hear a lot is, I don't believe in gay people. But they exist, right? So whatever we mean by belief, we're not just talking about believing things. We're talking about when we say that faith in many, many cases ends up being about what you believe. It isn't just believing things. It's believing the right things, and it's being certain that you believe the right things. I think what I was raised to believe, very well intended, was that it's not just enough to believe. You have to be certain. I mean, one of the questions that came up in every church service in some way, shape, or form was, if you died tonight, are you sure and certain, beyond the shadow of a doubt, of where you will spend eternity? And the way you can be sure and certain is to make sure that you're sure and certain of your beliefs about Jesus, God, the Bible, and all those sorts of things. And I do think beliefs matter. I do think they matter, but I don't think that they matter in the way that I was using them trying to pass my ordination exam. Because I think what happens is we really don't end up placing our faith in God. We end up placing our faith in correctness. We place our faith in the certainty that we have the correct beliefs. But who knows who has the correct beliefs? Like, is there a manual that has fallen out of the sky that a few people have privy to that they can read and look in the back of the book and the answers are there? I don't think that's how it works. I think we all end up saying, this is what I believe. And as much as we want to be certain, we just have to admit we aren't. We aren't certain. Even now, my beliefs have changed and shifted, and I probably would answer almost every question differently if I were undergoing that ordination exam today. Almost every question, probably every question, I would answer differently. But at the end, if you were to say, well, are you certain that you have it all right? I would just have to say no. I believe I have it all. Not all. I believe I have some of it right. I believe, for example, I think love is an absolute truth. I think love is the point. I think love is what we exist to experience and to give. I think love is everything. But I didn't read that in the back of an exam, in the back of a book somewhere. I'm placing my faith in love. I'm placing my faith in this love that I believe God is. So there's this reality that we often want to put our faith in beliefs, in correct beliefs, the correctness and rightness of our belief. But if we're being honest, we'd have to say, it really, we don't know. We don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. And one of the things I found is that we put tons of pressure on ourselves to know things in some ways, for sure, that we just can't know. And every time I see an interaction on Facebook or Twitter where one Christian is calling another Christian a heretic for some belief that they don't hold to, and I wonder, and actually I've been told myself that I'm going to stand before God someday and it's not going to go well, which makes me wonder. I've always been told, and it's in the Bible, and I think it's true, that we are saved by grace. We're saved by grace. And some of the people I know who are tossing out heresy charges against other people and threatening them with hellfire, like they would believe, they would say, yes, we are saved by grace. But I think what that equates to for so many people is we're actually saved by grace because we believe the right things. And I don't seem to get that message from Jesus or even from Paul or actually anywhere in the New Testament. I think grace, it's a word that means gift, right? It's where we get the word Eucharist, right? The word charis in Eucharist means gift. Eu means well or good. So Eucharist is the good gift. Whatever the word salvation means, which I think has a lot more to do with liberation and healing and being set free, that is a gift. That is a gift, not given because we've measured up or believed the right sort of things. It is a gift. And when you place all of your emphasis on having the right beliefs, on knowing for sure that you have the right beliefs, on this certainty that really can't be had, what began to happen for me is that everything that I quote unquote knew, all the things I knew that I would have said, I know this is true about certain groups of people or about certain theological questions, all of those things, so many of them, so many of the things I knew and my experiences of the world did not match. My experiences of people, my experiences of in conversation with people, whether it was people of other religious traditions or people of other sexual orientations or people of other Christian faith that I was told weren't. I mean, we were a little nervous about Methodists growing up because of all the social drinking and women in leadership. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, there was these other Christians who we were even unsure about, right? But I began to talk to them, and I began to meet people, those quote unquote those people, the people we were supposed to be leery and worried about. What I began to find is that my experiences and what